I was diagnosed with cancer the day I was assaulted. By the time the police found me, I was bruised and trembling. They urged me to call my family. My parents answered in a panic, claiming they were visiting friends but promised to come back immediately. My brothers, Mark and David, said they were on their way too. But hours passed. Only Mark showed up. He draped his coat over my shoulders, guilt written all over his face. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. If Lisa hadn't been sick, I never would have let you go alone. I'll make this right, I swear." Then his phone rang. He excused himself and stepped outside. Something about his hurried tone made me follow. "Mom, this is insane," he hissed into the phone. "You really did all this just to keep Sarah from going to Jessica's adoption party? You've gone too far." At that exact moment, a message popped up in our family group chat, a picture quickly deleted but impossible to unsee. Jessica stood smiling beside my family, her arm linked with my fiancé Michael's. My heart froze. So that's what this was. My own family had betrayed me, just because I opposed their decision to adopt Jessica. A bitter laugh escaped me. What was the point of fighting back? I was dying anyway. Mark's voice rose again, this time shaking with rage. "Who told you to actually hurt her? You're not getting another cent. You what? Do you want more? Fine. See how you like it when the cops come for you." He hung up and slammed his fist into the doorframe, eyes red with fury. I turned and walked back inside, numb. When he followed, his tone was strained. "Officer, were there any security cameras where the attack happened?" The officer frowned. "Your sister just dropped the charges. Do you want to reopen the case?" Mark spun toward me, disbelief etched on his face. I smiled faintly. "It's fine, Mark. I don't want this getting out. I'm not even married yet." His eyes filled with tears as he pulled me into a hug. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I should have protected you. But I wasn't thinking about forgiveness. I only dropped the case to keep Mark safe. If those men were caught, his name might come up. And despite everything, he was the only one who had ever really cared. Before Jessica came along, my brothers and even Dad had always shielded me from Mom's cruelty. But the day Jessica joined our family, everything shifted. Mark drove me home. When we walked in, everyone was already gathered, their fancy party clothes replaced by casual wear. Mom ran to me crying. If she hadn't been so cold all my life, I might have believed her tears were real. "Sarah, sweetheart, I feel so awful," she said. David added quickly, "I heard you dropped the charges. Are you sure that's what you want?" His tone was probing, not concerned. They all knew. I nodded silently. Then Dad stepped forward, voice gentle. "You must be hungry. I'll make you some noodles." That simple kindness cracked something in me. I hadn't cried until then. I started toward him, but Mom's sharp voice cut through the air. "Always with the food. You're so indulgent." Dad flinched and muttered, "I'll just warm you some milk. You should rest." Then he disappeared into the kitchen. He had always been afraid of her. Maybe he'd try to stop what they planned, but he never had the courage. I sat down and motioned for everyone else to do the same. My chest tightened as I spoke. "I need to tell you something. I can't keep running the company anymore. I have." Jessica slid beside me, looping her arm through mine with a practiced smile. "Don't worry, Sarah. I just graduated. Mom said I can help with the company while you recover. Everything will be fine." I pulled my arm away gently. "The company?" Mom interrupted. "Jessica calls me Mom now, Sarah. Don't make this difficult. Just rest. Jessica and your brother will handle things." I exhaled, my voice barely a whisper. "All right." What else could I say? I went upstairs, my legs heavy as stone. Just as I reached my bedroom door, Jessica's voice floated up behind me. "Michael is so worried when he heard about what happened. You should really call him." Her words pierced deeper than she could ever know. I didn't answer. I just stepped inside, shut the door, and let the tears fall. Under the hot spray of the shower, I shook uncontrollably. The water burned against my bruised skin, washing away the grime, but not the pain. Michael and I had promised to wait until our wedding night. That promise was gone now, shattered like everything else. When I stepped out, there was a glass of warm milk on my nightstand. Dad must have brought it while I was in the shower. I cracked the door open slightly. Laughter drifted up from the living room, Mom, Jessica, and my brothers chatting as if nothing had happened. Only Dad wasn't laughing. He kept glancing at the stairs, worry clouding his face. I quietly closed the door again and picked up my phone. Jessica's Instagram was full of photos from the night before. The party, the decorations, my family smiling like a perfect picture. Jessica stood in the center, radiant in her new dress, Michael's arm around her. She always tagged everyone, fishing for attention. But this post had no likes, no comments. I remembered when she first came into our home. I had welcomed her, even shared my clothes and secrets. But it didn't take long to see the truth. The sweetness, the tears, the fake innocence, it was all an act. She flirted with my brothers and played the victim to win over Mom. When I tried to warn them, I was scolded for being jealous. Now they all saw me as the problem. I opened my chat with Michael and typed 2 words. "We're done." His reply came quickly. "Sarah, your family said you made up the story about being assaulted. Is that true?" I didn't lie. "Then why did Jessica say you dropped the charges? If you're telling the truth, why won't you explain?" How could I tell him that my own family was behind it? He'd never believe me. Not when he trusted Mark like a brother. "We're done," I repeated and turned off my phone. I curled under the blankets, clutching the last bit of warmth I could find. When I woke up, the house was empty. Jessica's Instagram confirmed it. They were all out enjoying brunch together. The caption read, "Family time is the best time." So that was it. They'd left me behind without a thought. The doorbell rang. Michael stood there, holding a bouquet of tulips. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Sarah, you look awful." "We broke up," I said flatly. "Why are you here?" He hesitated, voice trembling. "Were you really assaulted?" I thought I was ready for that question. I wasn't. My hands began to shake. Before I could answer, laughter echoed behind him. Jessica's laughter. The rest of my family came in, all smiles. Jessica immediately grabbed the flowers from his hands. "Michael, you remembered I love tulips." Michael froze, staring at her, then at me. I forced a smile and said quietly, "Yes, he brought them for you." I turned to leave, but Dad stopped me, holding a takeout bag. "Sarah, I brought you some brunch." Mom's sharp voice cut through the air. "Brunch from that cheap place? How humiliating. Can't you think before you act?" Dad flinched, the bag slipping from his hands. Shrimp dumplings spilled across the floor. Jessica frowned. "Dad, seriously, that's embarrassing." I crouched down, picked up one of the fallen dumplings, brushed off the dust, and popped it into my mouth. "It's good," I said softly. "Thank you, Dad." Michael's face darkened. "You all went out and left her here alone?" He snatched the tulips from Jessica and pushed them toward me. "These are for you, Sarah. I thought about you all night. Even if you are as cruel as they say, or if what happened is true, I'm not abandoning you." Jessica burst into tears and buried her face in Mom's arms. "Mom, don't blame him. He's just too kind." It's so sad. Even after what happened, after so many men, he still cares for her. Michael stiffened. "So many men?
What are you talking about?"
He turned to Mark, grabbing his shirt. "You told me she made it up." Mark's jaw clenched. "We thought she had, but she didn't." Jessica's eyes glistened with mock sympathy. "It was awful. There were 5 or 6 of them. They said she was..." "Enough," I screamed. "Stop it. Why are you doing this to me?" The rage and humiliation surged through me until I could barely breathe. I looked at Michael and forced out the cruelest words I could find. "I wanted to break up anyway. We've been together for years, it's boring now. You're still a struggling artist, and I'm running a company. We don't match. Leave. I don't want to see you again." Then I ran upstairs, slamming my door behind me. The silence that followed was deafening. I collapsed on the floor, clutching my chest. The words I'd thrown at him sliced through me like blades. I didn't mean a single one. I wanted to tell him the truth, to let him hold me and promise that everything would be all right. But deep down, I knew there wasn't time for that anymore. I never saw him again. Not after that night. He left the country. I dragged myself through the last of my obligations, signing papers and delegating everything to Mark and Jessica. Then I disappeared to a small cottage by the sea, a place I had quietly bought months earlier. I told myself I was moving out, that I wanted peace, but the truth was bleaker. I was ready to die alone, and I wanted to do it on my own terms. Before I left, I invited my family for one final dinner. I raised my glass. "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for everything. Thank you, Mark and David, for being my brothers." I emptied my glass and stood. "One more thing. I'm leaving, and I'm not coming back." Jessica burst into tears, playing the hurt and the betrayed. You just want to ruin the adoption. What more do you want from me? She wailed. I stopped her cold. It's not about you. I have terminal cancer. I won't let you watch me fade away. Mom slammed her hand on the table, furious. Enough. I'm keeping Jessica, no matter what lies you spin.
Mark tried to reason with me.
Sarah, we still love you. This is just another sister. David scoffed. You expect me to believe you as a doctor? Don't be ridiculous. I looked at Dad, pleading for a flicker of support. He didn't meet my eyes, silenced by Mom's glare. I laughed then, a raw sound, and finished the bottle. In the end, I had nothing left. The next morning, David rushed home with my medical records and found the house empty. I was gone. The cottage was not a retreat, it was a command center. The sea that should have calmed me felt abrasive, every wave a reminder that time was running out. I hadn't come here to wait. I had come to act. I converted the tiny kitchen table into an office, my laptop my instrument. A bucket sat nearby for the chemo's nausea, and the bruises from the assault had settled into painful maps beneath my skin. But it was the cancer that kept a steady, cold pressure on my chest, a deadline ticking away. I had no allies. My father was passive, my brothers were complicit, my mother was the architect. My only leverage, the one person who might still be moved by truth, was Michael, the artist who had promised he wouldn't leave. He had failed me once. I needed him back, or at least I needed him useful. I found his number and called. His voice trembled with confusion and accusations. Jessica had already been spinning her story. I snapped into the executive voice I used in boardrooms. I told him, plainly, that I was dying, that the assault had happened, and that Mark had been involved in setting me up. He sputtered, shocked. That is monstrous, he said. I told him, quietly, that I was monstrous too, and then I hung up. He did not come.
He was weak.
I turned to the only practical step left and started searching for investigators. I slept with my head on the keyboard, dreaming of flames and Jessica's triumphant face. Hours later, a car rolled up on the gravel, headlights cutting through the night. It was Michael, at 3 a.m, standing in the doorway with terror in his eyes. He looked at me and stopped in his tracks. My God, Sarah, he whispered. I made tea, and he fumbled out words about confusion and betrayal. He accused me of leaving, of insulting him, of sabotaging everything. I told him I had been trying to protect him, that this was no longer about escape. I needed him to stand in the center of it, not run from it. He wanted the police. I laughed, a dry burst that turned into a cough. The police would not help. In our town, Mark had influence, David had authority at the hospital, and Mom ran in the right circles. I was the unstable daughter, the troublemaker. Going to the authorities would only bury me deeper. We won't go to the police, I said. We will become the jury. I needed him to be my instrument. He still hesitated, searching for proof, for something concrete he could understand. Artists trust what they can see. So I showed him. I removed my shirt and let him see the bruises, the medical scar of treatment, the signs that something violent had been done to me. He recoiled, stunned and sick. Then I dropped a file in his lap, the ER report I had paid for in cash. He read, his face draining color. Then he ran to the sink and vomited. When he came back, the softness in his eyes had been replaced by a cold, hard focus. Rage took root where pity had been. Good, I said, pulling my shirt back on. Now you're ready to work. The private clinic gave me a blunt deadline, 3 weeks, maybe 4, before the disease dulled my mind. Michael took on the role I gave him, equal parts agent and witness. My speech was ragged from the meds, but my orders were precise. First, the money, I told him. They did this for the company, for the payoff. No, he said at first, voice soft, then hardening. We fight them. No, I corrected, every word a conscious effort. We bankrupt them. In 2 feverish days, I emptied my accounts. Stocks, bonds, retirement funds, everything liquid. I turned my life savings into a war chest for $0.7 million, moved into a new trust he could access. Not for him, but for the operation we were about to run. From my bed, where the living room looked like a shore I could see from the window, I gave him a list. Find me the nastiest private investigator in the state, someone who eats discretion for breakfast. I want the men Mark hired, and I want proof. Find me a lawyer, a predator for family trusts, not our family council. And, I added with effort, you, Michael, must remember. paint the truth, keep the images. They will try to erase me, and I need someone to hold the story up when I'm gone. I named a man, Eris Thorne, ex-intelligence operative, expensive and brutal, the kind of man who did not ask moral questions.
Go, I said.
Bring me back evidence. Michael disappeared for a week. The cancer sped up, the pain a constant shadow, the pills and sleep a thin veil. I wrote nonstop, a record and a testament. I recorded the timeline, the family dynamics, the adoption party, the overheard phone call, the setup. I wrote until my hands cramped, until the keys blurred under my fingers. The lawyer call came next, a New York attorney who listened without smiling. I dictated a new will, clear and vindictive. My estate, all shares and holdings, would go to a national foundation for survivors. With 2 conditions, I said, each one designed to haunt them. First, rename the foundation to include their names on the letterhead, their names forever attached to the cause. Second, forbid any of them from attending my funeral or inheriting anything, with a separate fund to fight any contest, drawing on the war chest. The lawyer hesitated, then took instructions. I arranged to sign with a hospice nurse as witness. Michael returned sleepless and hollow. Thorne had found one of the men, a low-level thug who'd bragged too loudly in a bar. For the right price and with immunity lined up, he had talked. Michael handed me a recorder with a voice I barely recognized, crude and matter-of-fact, the man describing Mark's instruction to frighten me and Jessica offering to pay more to make the harm real, to ruin me. The words landed in the room like stones. Thorne's dossier followed, a notarized affidavit, images, texts, a private investigator's careful cruelty. Michael slid a USB across the table, evidence, and a signed statement. He also brought a file, my ER report, the objective record I had bought with cash. He played it, and I watched him change from pity to rage. You need to show people, I told him, voice thin. You live in images. You paint. Show them everything, the cottage, the bruises, the file. When they try to write me out, you make the world see. He couldn't promise easily, but he promised. I handed him the key to the lockbox, told him the 3 calls he must make the moment the death certificate is signed, and for the first time that week, I slept through the ocean's roar. David slammed the phone down, refusing the idea that Sarah was ill on her deathbed. A neurologist and department chief, he trusted tests and charts, not melodrama. He had insisted to Mom that she was manipulating everyone. His colleague in oncology, Dr. Evans, spoke differently, voice tight with concern. David, I'm looking at her records. This is aggressive. We gave her 6 weeks, and that was a month ago. The words unmoored him. He ran downstairs and into a car, driven by a single, urgent thought: get home, before it was too late. He burst into the family living room to find the house exactly as Sarah had left it, but with the family celebrating what they mistook for victory. Jessica fluttered in a bright dress, Michael awkward at her side, and Mom smiling as if nothing had shifted. Mom announced Jessica would be interim CEO. Mark was on the landing, telephone smoothing the transition. David didn't wait for explanations. He told them Evan's verdict, and the phrase stage 4 sliced through their smugness. Michael's face grew cold, then hard. He read parts of the private investigator's report aloud, forcing the room to confront what had been in the sealed file. The ER documentation, the injuries consistent with an assault, the DNA evidence noted by clinicians. For the first time, fear replaced their composure. Mom's practiced face betrayed panic, Jessica's confident grip on Michael loosened, and Mark, who had thought he could control the outcome, realized the consequences could be criminal. If she dies with proof, he spat, this is not a family scandal. This is conspiracy and prison. Panic turned to action. They fumbled through apologies and schemes. We'll go find her, Mom said, voice small. We'll bring her home. We'll apologize. Mark barked orders, get the car now. But Dad, the quiet figure who had sat through so many of their arguments, shook his head, fixating on the small domestic memory of the dumplings Sarah had eaten, an image that felt meaningless in the face of the larger catastrophe, and froze. The family surged, chaotic and terrified, toward the cottage, a single, terrible purpose now binding them, though whether to undo the damage or to silence it, the line blurred beneath the weight of their own guilt. The drive took 2 hours. 2 hours of suffocating silence, broken only by Mom's frantic whispers. We'll get her the best doctors, she said, voice trembling. We'll fly her to Switzerland. She can't die, not yet. We'll tell her Jessica's adoption was a misunderstanding, Mark muttered. You'll apologize to her, Mom snapped at Jessica. I won't, Jessica shrieked. She's the one who. You will, Mark hissed, his voice sharp enough to cut. Or I'll throw you out of this car. Do you understand me? Michael kept his eyes on the road, hands locked on the wheel. He didn't speak once. When they reached the coast, the night was heavy with fog. The cottage sat dark and still. It's quiet, Mom said, almost hopefully. Maybe she's not here. She's here, Michael replied. They stepped out, the roar of the ocean swallowing their voices. Sarah? Mom called, trying for warmth. Sarah, honey, it's us. We've come to take you home. No answer. Michael pushed open the unlocked door. The living room was dim, the only light the soft green pulse of a medical monitor. They found her in the bed, facing the sea. Peaceful. Still. David was the first to move. He checked for a pulse, then the morphine bag. When he turned, his face said everything. She's gone. A fragile silence settled. Then Jessica laughed. A high, nervous sound. Well, she said, brushing her hands together. That's that then. It's over. The company's mine. Mom exhaled, the relief visible in her shoulders. It's a tragedy, she murmured, already rewriting the story. She was fragile. But we're a family. We'll move forward. Mark, call the lawyer. We need to secure the estate. Mark nodded and reached for his phone, just as every phone in the room began to ring. The same notification, the same tone. He answered first. His face drained of color. He read the headline aloud. CEO Sarah, family name, dead at 32. Posthumous confession. Will, accuses family of criminal conspiracy. Mom screamed. David whispered, The Wall Street Journal? Michael stood by the door, watching them unravel. The switch was flipped, he said quietly. What package? Mark demanded, wild-eyed. Michael smiled for the first time in weeks. It wasn't kind. I made a few calls, he said. Exactly as instructed. Headlights cut across the room. Then the blue and red lights followed, sirens breaking the ocean's rhythm. A black sedan pulled up. A man in a long coat stepped out. Eris Thorne, Michael said. He likes to watch the ending. Mark lunged, but the front door burst open before he could reach him. Mark, David, Jessica, family name. A state trooper called. You're under arrest. The house exploded into chaos. Mark, arrested for conspiracy to commit assault. The DA had the recordings, texts, and payment trail. No bail. Jessica, arrested for solicitation of aggravated assault. The messages, make her worthless, sealed her fate. Mom, arrested for conspiracy. The shell transfers, the bank statements, all led back to her.
She didn't resist.
David, not handcuffed, but finished. Thorne handed a folder to a man from the state medical board. The report of his negligence, his refusal to diagnose, his cover-ups. His career was gone before dawn. Dad never left home. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty space where Sarah used to sit, whispering her name. Michael stayed behind. He walked to Sarah's bedside, kissed her cold forehead, and whispered, It's done. I painted it, just like you wanted. He picked up his bag, brushes, tubes of paint, and left the cottage. Past the flashing lights. Past the family screams. He drove away into the dark, the lockbox with her final testimony safe in his trunk. Epilogue 1 year later. Soho, New York. The gallery was overflowing. Critics, collectors, reporters, all desperate to glimpse the show that had already been called the art event of the decade. The artist's name was Simple Michael. The exhibition's title, The Adoption Party. It was not a pleasant show. It was a revelation. Each canvas was raw, beautiful, and unbearable. The phone call. A man on the phone, his shadow stretched into something monstrous, while a smiling girl watched with hollow eyes. The doctor. A physician turning away from a crying woman, admiring his own reflection in a mirror of blood. The matriarch. A perfect, elegant woman braiding her children's hair into the bars of a cage. And at the center, the CEO. Sarah sat in her chair by the window, thin from illness, her head bare, her face pale, but her eyes burned with defiance. She wasn't looking at the ocean. She was looking out at the viewer. At everyone. It wasn't a portrait. It was a verdict. Michael stood in the corner, dressed in black. A critic approached, wiping tears from her eyes. It's devastating, she said softly. A tragedy. What a terrible waste. Michael looked at her, then at Sarah's painted gaze. It's not a tragedy, he said, lifting his glass. It's a testament. He raised his champagne toward the portrait, and under his breath he added, "She didn't lose." He smiled faintly. She won.